This is a fan-generated show. If you would like to support us, please go to jamieglazov.com, and also don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, General Michael Flynn tells his story. With us this evening, General Michael Flynn, former National Security Advisor for President Trump and best-selling author of The Field of Fight. General Flynn, what an honor and a privilege to have you here.
Jamie, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate all that you do, all that you represent, all your team represents. And to all those that watch this and watch your podcast and watch and listen and learn from the messages that you give to not only the United States of America, but to the world is so powerful and so important, especially with what our country is facing now. I mean, you've lived and breathed this, and I would just say that what we are about, and I think that hopefully the conversation that we'll have tonight will expose some of the challenges that we face, but also I do firmly believe that people are out there and they feel alone. We have to make sure that people around this country feel like they're not alone. There's many of us who are ready to stand up and do more, and we're going to have to do more. So hopefully we'll get a chance to talk about some of that tonight and make a few of your listeners understand that they're not alone out there, that there's a lot of us that feel the same way, and we are going to take action.
Amen. General Flynn, just wanted to say we here at the Glazov Gang and so many of our families, our friends, we've been praying for you all of these years. We love you so much. It's an understatement to say that you're a very special person. We see you as one of God's soldiers on this planet. So before we start, I just wanted to say it's just such a blessing to have this program graced by your presence. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks, Jamie. Thanks for saying that. It's a humbling experience to have what happened to my family over the last 4.5 years by our own government, by the United States government. But the humbling part of it is, why I use that word, is that the American people allowed us to survive. And it was only by the grace of God and only through the trust and belief in my family and what we were going through, frankly the grace of people across this country and even Americans around the world, Jamie, that came to our side and helped us get through what I think the entire world experienced, witnessing what was happening to me. And as it was exposed, as the days and months and years went on, and it continues to be exposed even now, it sort of foretells what it is that we're facing in the future. And that future is here. And now I feel really a great responsibility because of what the American people did for me. I feel responsible to reach back out to them and to say thank you to the American people, Jamie, but also to let them know that I am standing or sitting here tonight talking with you, and we will not relent. We will not give up. We will not give in. My life, as I have defined it, has been and will continue to be a life of service. And that's service to my faith, service to my family, and service to the foundation of our country, which is really our Constitution, which I firmly believe in. So, and I think that we have the fabric of the Constitution is fraying, and we cannot allow that Constitution, that beautiful document that has lasted for so long and allowed us to do so many things, to fray the way it has been seen to be fraying over the last number of months now, and certainly in my world. And in my experience is really over the last probably couple of decades that has brought us to this point and to this conversation tonight.
Thank you, General. So I want to definitely get to so many of these issues that you just mentioned. General Flynn, let's begin with you for a minute in your background. I don't think that you ended up to be a great Marxist or leftist in your life, to say the least. Tell us a little bit about your childhood and your youth. What were your influences? Was there a dad, a mom, an aunt, an uncle, a great book that you read? What's something that planted in you the seeds for understanding the lie of the leftist vision?
Well, I am from an Irish Catholic family. I'm one of 9. I'm in the middle of that group of 9. My mother and father raised us. My father was a World War II and a Korean War vet. He retired from the Army in the early 60s at the rank of Master Sergeant. My mother was a terrific person and incredible woman in her own right, was valedictorian, salutatorian of her high school class. And instead of going off and to a college career and probably another life, she decided to raise children. And thank God that she did, because I have 9 great brothers and sisters who in their own rights have done terrific. And that family was small town in the small state of Rhode Island. We attended some Catholic school at the early days of my life, but primarily public school system from elementary through high school. Went to the state university here, because my parents were all about education, particularly my mother. Now, all of us did things that you would typically do in a large family. Everybody trying to earn a living for the family. Newspaper routes. Worked at odd jobs, dishwashing. Busboy. All those kinds of things that you do growing up. But everybody was going to work. Everybody was going to go outside and played sports. Played an awful lot of sports, and just did a whole range of things as you typically do as a young person. And I always thought that in my upbringing that, as I was growing up, I always loved the Army. I loved when my father was still in the military, he would take me around to different places. We grew up around a military base where he ended up retiring. And I loved being around the military. And I always felt like I was going to go into the service at some point in time. I think from the time that I could, remember back. And there was a time when I was in high school that I thought I would enlist. I ended up going off to the State University, University of Rhode Island. One of the other parts of our family was that we were a Democratic stronghold family growing up. My mother was actually involved in local politics, helping precinct level and getting the vote out, that kind of stuff in the Democratic Party. And my mother was a huge right to life proponent. In fact, she was the right to life chairman in the state of Rhode Island for a couple of terms, and so that's the Democratic Party at that time, Jamie, and she was the pro-life chairman. So the Democratic Party, and I sort of look at it as a complete reversal in the way things have happened in this country, because really for me, I was always a Democrat. We grew up that way, even up until the time when President Trump had narrowed down to 4 people who his vice presidential potential running mates were going to be, and I was one of those 4. So when I look back at my upbringing and the life that we had, and it was a life and a household that was filled with discipline, and that really came from my father, and education, and that really came from my mother. My father always taught us, though, that he was sort of the golden rule: treat others like you like to be treated. And that was super important for all of us as we all grew up and started to go off in our own ways and deciding what we were going to do in life. And as I said, I went off to the state university. I went through the ROTC program, which is a military component in a university system, other than going off to a military academy or whatever, like a West Point or Annapolis like they have, or the Air Force Academy. I went through the ROTC program. And my first assignment, which was probably the most impactful assignment for me, that made me feel like this was my calling, to be in the military. And that was the 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And I spent more than half of my career at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. I served there from the time I was a second lieutenant until the time I was a one-star general. And I always felt like that was the type of people that when I talk about when I talk about the fabric of our Constitution, the fabric of our military institution is bound by the type of people that serve at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, which is the home of the airborne and the home of the special forces. And that is really the best of the type of people that we have serving in our military. And I had such a terrific first assignment that strengthened me to continue to want to serve. And, like they say, the rest is history. And from there, I had the privilege to go and serve overseas in many locations, on many battlefields, in support of national policies, national directives, right? I mean, the commander in chief in our country sends the military to the war. The military doesn't decide which wars we're going to fight in. So I would say that over the course of from 1981, when I entered the active force, until 2014, just about every single conflict we were involved in during that period of time, I either directly participated in or certainly supported in some form or fashion. So that's in a 5-minute dissertation or missive. That's my life in a little bit of a nutshell. And
Right.
And I've never regretted anything I've done, or any day that I've had. I have a wonderful wife and children. My wife, Lori, her and I have known each other and been together since we were 13 years old. We grew up in the same hometown. She grew up 3 miles from where I'm sitting. And there's in our area, this is a very historic area. We have a lot of different demographics here. The whole makeup of America is in this little state. And she's from the Portuguese community. I'm from the Irish community. We met as in grade school, and we just always had that connection. And we're still together today. And we're going to have our 40th anniversary here in about 2 more months. So like I always say, you got to like the person that you love, and her and I are best friends. And without that bond and without that strength from her and my family, particularly my family and her family, and we would have not gotten through what we've experienced, because we never thought that we'd ever experience. We serve our military, go off to war. I served 5 years in combat in different war zones, and that means away from my family. I don't want anybody's sympathy about serving away from my family, because there are those that serve this country and gave their lives to this country, for our country, on the battlefield, and they'll never see this country again. They'll never see their wives or their moms or their dads or their children again. So I feel honored. I feel humbled to have served in the capacity that I did. And I rose up in the ranks in the military to the highest office of the military intelligence in the Department of Defense. And I also served as the Assistant Director of National Intelligence, as well as the Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is not only one of the largest intelligence agencies in the United States of America, but it's one of the largest intelligence agencies in the world. And I had full respect for all of our institutions and all the people that serve in government. And I learned an awful lot about that during my time in the military. But as I entered the world of politics and then began to see, because I've always known what's been happening to our country, Jamie. I've always observed the infiltration of communists into our country, into our government. into the lifeblood of our economy, into our academic institutions. And that's real. It's not a conspiracy theory that everybody talks about in the mainstream media. This is very real. And the Communist Party of America has been around for over 100 years. The Democratic Socialist Party of America has been around for probably half that time. Certainly, they have become more emboldened in this country over the last 3 decades. Nations like China and Russia, who are competitors, adversaries, threats, enemies, whatever you want to call them, however you want to define them, whatever the moment is that makes you feel that way. What we tend to forget is that despite all these all these internal challenges that I just faced, our academic institutions, our economic institutions, particularly our banking system, the technology titans that control and censor the information flow of ideas. That's all internal, but what we also have are these external influencers out there that are nations like China and Russia, and then other satellite nations of them like Iran and North Korea or Venezuela. These are nation states that want to see the demise of this country, and then there are the sort of what I call the mega, not MAGA, but mega in terms of large people that are at the very wealthiest levels of the world, who are also influencers and who also don't like the way the United States operates or functions, and they try to step in and change our life, change the way we live. So all that said, to your question about sort of what shaped me, a whole range of things shaped me as a young child. Mostly it was about service and serving others, whether it was, our community, which we always had to do as, my father and mother would tell us to get out there and do things for the community, right? I mean, whether it's running a newspaper around or helping out at a boys club or helping out with something going on in the community, get involved. And that's the way it was in our household growing up. And it was get out of the house and go do something, make something of yourself. And I wish that maybe one day you can meet my other brothers and sisters who are terrific people, and all of them. I'm proud of every single one of them, all of them, and what they're doing in their own lives and what they continue to do for this country.
Wow, thank you, General Flynn. I want to get to the infiltration of our enemies into our government and society, and what you knew about it, what you know about it, how that's connected, of course, to your persecution by the left. Before we get to that, just a little bit more on you and your background. A Catholic upbringing, and your mom named you Michael for a certain reason. She gave you the middle name Thomas for a certain reason. Could you talk a little bit about that?
It's funny that you say that. So my mother always named all of us after saints. That's just the way she was. That's the way she was wired, and she's a beautiful. She's deceased now, but she's just a beautiful woman, strong, highly intelligent woman, and so grounded in just good common sense, and the strength of her convictions. You would win few debates around our kitchen table in our house. So my mother named all of us after saints, and she was very particular about what she chose for not only the first name but the middle name, and she did it based on her pregnancy. I guess the things that were going on at the time and how she felt, and that's sort of how she did it. So it's easy to find out, but she always said that she was going to name me Michael. I was born on Christmas Eve too, by the way. So she was going to name me Michael because I was a fighter. She always felt like I was going to be a fighter. And then she named me Thomas because she just felt like, I was going to be one that always questioned things. And that's what she told me. And I appreciate you asking that question, because it's a bit emotional, actually, because it brings back a lot of memories of all of us sitting there listening to her, particularly talking about why she named each of us, and she would describe us to a T as to how we were, especially as when we were, you know, young adults or adults sitting around where we'd come home for a, you know, a Christmas or some event, somebody getting married. So we would all sit around. I always loved listening to her talk, and she was a great one. And she would always describe us and why we were named a particular way. So that's from my perspective. She named me Michael and gave me the middle name Thomas. And boy, if there was, you know, those two names were a pair of shoes on my feet, that's exactly, you know, why I feel as grounded as I do today, along with the golden rule, which my father taught us, which was treat others like you like to be treated, and really, really take care of other people as long as they, you know, are willing to accept that care. And like he said, you know, people are good, and they'll generally, if you give them your honesty, if you give them you share your trust with them, they will pay that back tenfold.
Well, General Flynn, we know that Archangel Michael was a fighter, but we know that he won some very important battles. So I think that some great victories are still ahead for you, right?
I hope so. I mean, I like to think that we have to always remind ourselves, Jamie, where we've come from. And we always have to remind ourselves who we are. And I learned recently, I guess, but it's probably something that I just intuitively always knew. And I get reminded about it from my wife, who's terrific and I mean, about as grounded as anybody's that you're ever going to meet. You know, that when you look in the mirror in the morning, right, or at some point in time, you know, you look in the mirror and you're there by yourself looking at yourself, you know who you are. What happens is when you turn away from that and then you come out into the world, are you somebody different? And I think that too often people try to be somebody different. They try to pretend to be somebody else. And I think that if I can keep that in mind, and I can keep that sort of condition in my being, or that criteria as to how I view who I am, and I think that that's super important guidance for anybody. I mean, it's a good leadership principle. You know, don't try to be somebody that you're not. Don't try to pretend like you're a funny guy if you're not a funny guy, right? Don't try to pretend to be something that you want other people to think you are. Be yourself. And I think that kind of I believe that sort of authenticity. I mean, the American people, you can't fool them. I mean, they know. And I think that a lot of it, when we look at our political life in this country, we see too much of this political correctness. Politicians that they do this, they touch their finger to their tongue and then they turn it up to the wind to see which way is the wind blowing. And if you have strong values, if you have strong principles, if you're grounded in common sense, you know what the difference is between right and wrong. You don't ever have to touch your finger to your tongue and check which way the wind is blowing. And I think too many people do that. And in fact, definitely too many politicians. But if you can look in the mirror and understand who you are, you define yourself, nobody else defines you. And when you walk away from that, then and you're that same person, you're the exact same person that you say you are to yourself, then I think that's powerful. And that's what I am reminded every day to do and to be and to act. And I do that through my own self-reflection, and certainly the support and the love and the honesty from my wife and those people that I really consider true friends, and those are close family members and others who remind me periodically to watch out, to take care, to be safe, to do these kinds of things, and they're all looking out for you because they know that that when it's time for them to need somebody to count on, they know they can count on me, and I'll be there for them.
Amen. Very powerful, General Flynn. Thank you. Now, I want to get to now the story of what happened at the administration. I'm not completely sure at this stage, of course, I think there are some things you are not going to talk about at this stage, and you just use your own discretion. I'll just throw some things on the table, and you take it and just talk about whatever you want. But just let me throw this out there for a minute then. So story has it that Obama warned Trump about you when Trump was coming in. So, you know, from my take, you knew something, and you knew a lot of stuff, and I think that the left didn't like what you knew. Stephen Coughlin, for instance, in his book Catastrophic Failure, you know, he documents and unveils a lot of disturbing things in terms of the Muslim Brotherhood's infiltration of the government, of our society, our institutions, etc. Richard Higgins has done a lot of that, etc. So there was a bit of a nightmare going on under Obama in this context. Just off the top of my head, for instance, the Cairo speech from the beginning, the Muslim Brotherhood leaders in the front two rows in that Cairo speech. In October 2011, when some of this stuff was really beginning, the administration followed the Muslim Brotherhood requests and purged all FBI and intelligence agencies' training manuals of any mentioning of Islam and jihad. Now, this is for another time and place, but we can just imagine what repercussions and consequences that had. If you imagine during the Cold War, for instance, if communists are trying to hurt us, but we're not allowed to talk about communism and defending ourselves. Very quickly here, again, off the top of my head, Mohammed Ali Biari. This is an individual on Obama's Department of Homeland Security Advisory Council. This guy was a Brotherhood sympathizer, an outspoken admirer of the Ayatollah Khomeini, but he's part of the administration. Then we have Fort Hood, we have the Boston Marathon Massacre, we have San Bernardino, all these things happening. Now we know that investigator Phil Haney, God bless his soul, murdered under very mysterious circumstances about a year ago. Former DHS agent revealed that he was doing an investigation, and he was watching the jihad globalist networks, how they were coming in and out of the country. Obama administration closed that down. And Haney revealed that in all of those investigations, they were also following the networks where Saeed Farouk and Tafshin Malik were connected in their own way. And if that investigation had been successful and they had gone on, then the San Bernardino massacre may very well not have happened, because we know that Farouk and Malik had perpetrated them. I could go on here, but there's something very dirty going on here. The Obama administration making us very vulnerable. My humble hypothesis is that General Michael Flynn knew a lot about these things. All of a sudden, he's going to be the right-hand man of the president. I think a lot of forces out there did not want you informing President Trump of many of these things. Have I said anything that's even slightly connected to the truth?
Yeah, I think it's all true. I mean, I think every bit of it is, and there's more. I mean, you know, the whole. So let's take it to the 60,000-foot level and just try to simplify it, because your knowledge, my knowledge, but your knowledge particularly, is vast. It's deep. It's thick with the details, and I think that. People trying to understand everything going on, you know, they don't know what to believe, and they hear all these different things and these names and these groups. So what we face, and what we faced under the Obama administration for 8 years. So why would President Obama, first of all, in his transition of the United States of America from one president to another, in the conversation that he had with President Trump, he only talked about two things. One was Kim Jong-un, who had, you know, a nuclear capability in North Korea, still is the leader there, and he, as a threat to the country, and he talked about General Mike Flynn. And so why do that? And it goes right back to the beginning of this show where you mentioned the field of fight, right? This book that I had written about, you know, radical Islamism that's on the rise, not on the run. The Iranian deal, which and people can go look at my testimony in I think it was June or July of 2015. It's online, you can find it. That testimony was harsh. I served at the highest levels of the intelligence community. I have vast knowledge of the intelligence community, the structure, the apparatus, the operations, the kinds of things that we get involved in. I'm not going to tell you that I know all of the various details of everything, but I know how we operate, and I know where we operate, and I know the fundamentals of the operations that we are involved in. I served in the Department of Defense, the highest levels of the Department of Defense, and I know the decision-making processes in our Department of Defense. I serve very closely with the Department of State, and I understand the diplomatic means by which we try to achieve ends, supposedly that are for the betterment of the United States of America. And when we face an enemy or enemies that do not like our way of life, and that's essentially, you know, communists, Marxists, anybody that's ever studied our wars over the last 100 years, the Islamic nations, with few exceptions, aligned with our enemies during World War I and World War II. We're still in. I mean, this 9/11 will be 20 years. This 9/11 coming up in September will be 20 years that since we've been brutally attacked on 9/11 in 2001, almost 3,000 lives destroyed that day, and then tens of thousands of families hurt, ruined, destroyed, you know, because of that, and then tens of thousands of other people's lives because of all of the deployments that we've had and we continue to have. So I stood in the breach with Donald J. Trump, candidate, Donald J. Trump, the transitioning into the White House, and then serving as his national security advisor for a brief moment. They knew of all of the things that I knew, and I knew what they were involved in. So when you talk about Muslim Brotherhood or Hezbollah or other, you know, because what you were really talking about at the beginning, Jamie, is you're talking about threats that are internal to this country. Okay. So everything that we've talked about not only exists outside of our borders in places like the Middle East, in places like East Asia or Eastern Europe in the name of Russia, or this country of North Korea and other threats out there, some right in our own hemisphere, like as in Venezuela or Cuba. These are nations that have a complete opposite of who we are, and those nations are the threats, but they don't sit idly waiting for a mistake by the United States of America. What they do, and they do it in many cases in concert with each other, they work against our interests, and they do it domestically right here at home. And they work inside of our institutions, like our academic institutions that you have been very articulate about in many of your shows and many of the things that you've written about. They work in concert inside of our economic system, right? I mean, made in China. I mean, there's a reason why everything's made in China, because there was an effort to basically bring everything there. It had nothing to do with trade as much as it had to do with control. And when you think about, let's just use China as an example. I read not too long ago, as I studied China over the last, really 30, 40 years, but just recently I was interested in a couple of things, because I saw some purchases of some historic places in the United States by the Chinese government. And so I said, well, how much do they actually own? And I think the number, if I remember it right, the number of acres of really prime property in this country that the Chinese own is around 30 million acres here in the United States. So that's one aspect of how an enemy comes inside of our home and or an adversary or a competitor, however you want to describe them, comes inside of our home and takes over the living room, the dining room, the kitchen, and all of a sudden you turn and it's like you want something to eat, but you got to go to that, you got to go to there, to that cook, to that Chinese cook, and he's going to decide whether you're going to eat or not in your own kitchen. That's one aspect. The other aspect, the other side of this is this radical Islamic threat. And these are, in some cases, when you look at these groups, these are avowed Marxists. And people need to understand that it's not just about radical Islamism, but these are ideologies, and these are political systems and political ideologies that align very nice and neatly together. And they bring these like-minded radical people together. And it's not just sitting over in countries in the Middle East, it's right here at home. So even things like the immigration challenges that we have faced over the last couple of decades, we don't even have any real clear idea as to how many illegal immigrants are in this country. I read an article back, I think it was 2002 or 2004 timeframe, that struck me. And at that time, they were talking about upwards of 12 million illegal immigrants in this country. And then all of a sudden, about 10 years later, around 2014, 2015, I read another article where they said we have about 12 or 15 million illegal immigrants. And I'm like thinking to myself, as I'm reading that article, I said, I remember reading this 10 years ago. So that number has had to have doubled, maybe even more. And so that infiltration, in some cases, it's not just an infiltration or a illegal immigration, it's an illegal invitation. And we have populations that have been brought into this country, imported from other nations and planted inside of the country. And you say to yourself, why does this group of people live up in Michigan or Wisconsin? Why does this group live, in Virginia? Why do they live in Northern Florida? So you have to look around it, because these are decisions that are being made for intentional purposes, and they're political, ideological purposes with the overall intent of gaining power in this country, because obviously a subtext to power is wealth. It's not about gaining wealth. Wealth you'll have if you have power. And when you have ultimate power, when you have state power, that's where we're moving toward, Jamie. And so all these threats that we're facing, forget the names and forget what might have happened, or this battle or that tactic or that attack. And we have to look at the overall system that is working globally to basically destroy the United States of America. And they have, in many cases, they've written about it. In many cases, their leaders talk about it. In specific cases, countries like Iran, the Obama administration, and we're already seeing this renewal of this whole Iranian deal, right? The Iranian initiative, seeing that restarted again. But this is a country that preaches hatred to America, that preaches that we're death to America. I mean, they're still designated as the number one state sponsor of terrorism. I mean, so how we're hypocritical, or one doesn't match up to the other. So what we have to understand is that these threats are very real. They're domestic. These threats are very real. They're foreign, and we have to understand that they are connected. They are in many cases, they're seamless, and we are taken advantage of because of our freedoms and because of who we are. And so making that statement, that does not mean that I want to restrict our freedoms. In fact, I want to continue to broaden our freedoms, but I want to respect, and I want to have faith in the institutions of our federal government. And today, the one thing that's missing, and I'm not sure that the people in Washington, D.C. care too much. Honestly, I really think that Washington, D.C. is just so corrupt and so broken, and it has to be fixed. It has to be fixed. There will be, Jamie, there will be a grassroots movement in this country. There will be a grassroots Christian movement in this country, a Judeo-Christian following that will occur based on the principles and values founded in our Constitution. This will happen, and it will happen at the local level. And there will be light shined upon these kinds of things, because the institutions in our country, from the legislative branch to the executive branch to the judiciary, the judicial branch, people in our country have lost faith in those institutions, the rule of law at the highest levels of our government, namely the top law enforcement arm, the FBI, the executive branch arm that's supposed to take care of the rule of law in this country, the Department of Justice. They seek convictions instead of truth. That's how they're incentivized, that culture. And so those things, we can't have that. We can't have that type of culture in our country. And so we have to really renew this faith in these institutions. The only way that's going to happen is from the bottom up. It's not going to happen from the top down.
Wow, General Flynn, so all of these evil forces during the Obama administration, oh yeah, he was succeeding. Oh, they just want to destroy this country. They thought they had it in the bag. Hillary was going to finish off what Trump started. Trump gets in. We know what the deep state wants, what the globalists want, what the left wants. They're all in sync together here. And so they got to get rid of Trump. They got to get him out of the way because he cares about America. He wants to protect freedom, et cetera, et cetera. So we've got an election coming up in 2020. I'm going back in time. Trump's got 50,000 people at this rally. He's got 50,000 people at this rally. Biden's got like 3 people sitting in some parking lot. I'm still not sure if they were real, but that's another debate. And then all of a sudden we have this magic virus. And then it's too dangerous to come vote in person now. But of course you can go to a BLM rally and burn some businesses. That's okay. But voting in person is too dangerous. We need the mail-in ballot now. Then all of a sudden we've got all these tens of thousands of mail-in ballots that really don't belong to anyone or to dead people. Something's very strange there. Trump is ahead in Pennsylvania by a couple 100,000 at the least, if I'm correct, if not more. Then the counting stops. Then all of a sudden these walls come up, or those billboards they were they were putting them up. And then all of us, looks, I mean, we know the story, but something is very strange. And I just wonder, what do you have to say about what just happened?
Well, what happens, first of all, when there is something that goes wrong for the wrong reasons by the wrong people, that what eventually happens, Jamie, is the truth comes out. And I would just say that everything that we are seeing in the media these days, and probably since, probably the middle of December on, but certainly into January, and then now, all these different big ticket media debates that are going on TV these days, everything is a distraction to not stay focused on what happened the morning of the 4th of November, 2020, almost through the 7th of November for the 3 days following the election, the mail-in ballots, as you talked about. Everything else is a distraction. And in some cases, I believe that what we're going to learn is that much of this stuff was a setup, or certainly get this out there because we need that kind of noise. We need that sort of deflection to keep away from allowing people to discuss what happened on the 3rd of November. And I can tell you what happened on the 3rd of November, the truth will come out, that you cannot hide it. More and more stuff, more and more information comes out every day. We're learning things that's empowering the argument, even though we were, and I will give the left credit for us being sort of outmaneuvered. The American people were outmaneuvered, and the clock ran out, constitutional clock, but it doesn't mean that the constitutionality wasn't violated. It was violated. It was violated by a number of states and a number of things that are all still in play. I mean, we just saw a ruling up in Michigan. We've seen machines in New Hampshire now being audited. We've seen, I think, Claudia Kenny, I think it's District either 20 or 22 in New York, who did not concede, and she fought, and she finally got into Congress after 3 canvassings of her vote. We've seen indictments and I think convictions, but certainly indictments in small places in New Jersey and Mississippi and in Texas. We have the audit, the forensic and the signature and the mail-in ballot audit going on out in Maricopa County is still being debated, but I think that that's going to happen, is my belief. We know recently we learned about fraudulent ballots in the state of Georgia. I know of another district in Pennsylvania where the great gal who was running in one of the districts here in Western Philly, and I think it's Manchester County. Don't hold me to that. That has not conceded. So there's all these battles. There's these skirmishes that are being waged on America's battlefield, America's election battlefield, still from the 3rd of November, and all of them are not being covered. In fact, none of them are being covered. If you find it, it's only because you're like me. You're paying very close attention, or we are intimately involved in many of them to help these people, fight these legal battles. Everywhere we have been, Jamie, and this includes from the 3rd of November up until the 20th of January, and then subsequent the weeks and a couple of months now after that. Everywhere where we've been to do nothing but find the truth, to discover the truth, discover the outcome as to whatever it was, Biden or Trump, doesn't matter. At this stage, it's like, I want to just get to the truth. But every time we have gone at asking for something that we, the people, the American taxpayers, either in the states or at the federal level, are paying for, we pay for our election system. So we want it to be free, fair, and transparent. Every single place we've been, there have been legions of lawyers being paid for by God knows who, to fight, to basically expose, they're fighting us. We're trying to expose the truth, and they're fighting against that. I mean, and that's why I say and I said this, I think, as far back as the 4th or the 5th, maybe, of November of 2020. And I know I said this in one of the first interviews when I was asked about, what do you think's happening? One of the things I said was the judiciary is not going to solve this problem for us. The judiciary in the year 2000, with one county in Florida, did not decide on the outcome of the Bush-Gore fight that they had back then. All they decided on then was the constitutionality of the vote system that they had in that one county in Florida. And when they went back and said, this component of it is not constitutional, that allowed the county to then go back and say, okay, these ballots, these things are not constitutional, therefore they get thrown out. George Bush is the victor. Well, that's all we were looking for. But what happened this time around, instead of picking one county in Florida to try to get control of a very, very important state, they picked 6 counties across the country. They didn't pick 50 states. They were really smart. This is very strategic and really, really smart. I mean, I give them credit. I give the other side credit for how they strategically considered how to steal a presidential election through 6 counties, and how they were going to put people in there, the right messaging, the right resources, the right types of money. And then you have your machinery ready after the fact. And that machinery is your cancel culture or your tech censorship, right? If I stand up and I say the vote was corrupt and I don't trust the outcome, then I get bumped off of Twitter, right? I had 1.3 million followers on Twitter. I'm censored off of that. And I always tell people, because I think it was because I used to say, God bless America on every tweet that I would have, or I would put some biblical verse on there. And it's just such an it's a godless culture in the tech sector. But so, I mean, that's a long-winded explanation of what we're facing in this country right now. We've got to move here, folks that are listening. That let's get back into our churches. Let's bring God back into this country, because the left that we're facing, they don't have God in their lives. They don't believe in God. They want to take God out of, in God we trust, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. They want to remove that. They don't, they're not joking when they say, women and amen. I mean, this is not about skin color either. Everybody's going to get called a racist. You're a racist. You're this, you're that. I mean, I don't care if a person's, pink with purple polka dots. It's like everything else that we know to be true. The things that I talked about as in my own growing up. You treat others like you like to be treated, but immediately you get called a racist because you don't believe something, or you have an argument about, the election, right? The left would always say disenfranchised. You're disenfranchising me, right? You're disenfranchising me. And the judges would come in and say, yep, you're being disenfranchised. Well, entire states have been disenfranchised. How about the state of Oklahoma? 77 counties, the entire state, first time in the history of this country, all 77 counties voted for the president, Donald J. Trump. First time in the history of this country. I mean, there's all kinds of stats that just speak to the laughability, frankly, but this is serious, of how Trump crushed in this last election.
Yeah.
But, when I think about 77 counties in one state, all of them, and they all went for Donald Trump, every one of those people that voted in every one of those counties is disenfranchised as far as I'm concerned, because the true outcome of the election, didn't occur. And so that entire state, it's like they almost didn't exist. It's like that they were all excited and they got fired up and they went out there and voted in droves. And lo and behold, the rug was pulled out from underneath them in other parts of the country in just a couple of counties. So that's what we're facing. So what we have to do is we have to get to the truth. We will get to the truth. The truth will come out. It always does. And there are still some legal battles. I want people to know that you're not alone. There's those of us that are out here fighting this good fight, and we will, and we're going to do it through every means that we can, through the constitutional process. And we're going to do it from the grassroots level on up. Doing it from the top doesn't work.
Right.
Thank you, General Flynn. Just wrapping up now. Really hope that you'll come back for round 2, because I feel this is only the beginning of our discussion. But look, my family's from the Soviet Union, and we know what happened there. And we can just feel this Bolshevik revolution happening all over again here, step by step. So these are dark times, but as Christians, we know that the darker it gets, we should be dancing in the streets, because it means our Savior is closer and getting closer and closer. And He's with us always, of course. I just mean in terms of how everything plays out in terms of Him coming back. And so we pray for that. But while we celebrate our Savior, Jesus Christ, it doesn't mean that it still doesn't hurt to see injustice prevail and the persecution of good, beautiful people, and the assault against freedom. And so I want to finish here. I think it would be most appropriate, General Flynn, to finish at this point on the work you're doing right now in helping veterans. And it just says so much that this is not known, because you're doing so much for veterans right now. The media is silent. They're not helping. And you would think that, you pointed out in one of your shows recently, the veterans are the ones who gave the freedom to the press to do what they do. But when it comes time to help the veterans, the media is silent. But I want to end on this. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing for veterans and the significance of it to end our program tonight.
So thanks for asking me and talking about our vets. And like you said, our veterans, they are the true bedrock of our country, because through our veterans, through their service to our country, they give us everything that we have, every joy that we see in our lives, every happiness that we have, all the luxuries that we have, all the privileges that we have. That's what our veterans do. I am I work with behind the scenes a couple of different organizations, one of which I became familiar with a couple of years ago, called the Journey Home Project. The Journey Home Project was actually started by Charlie Daniels, David Corlew, who was his best friend, continues his legacy, Charlie Daniels' legacy, the Journey Home Project. And there's other organizations out there that we always are willing to step up to and help to benefit our veterans. It doesn't matter whether it's a small community veterans organization or whether it's some of the larger organizations like a Wounded Warriors or the Special Operations Warrior Foundation, where we can help these people. My endeavor is to make sure that we never forget who our veterans are, what they represent, and that's all the wars that we have still veterans living. And I've, in just the last 10 days, Jamie, I've met veterans who served in World War II, the Korean War, many who served in the Vietnam War, and then many who served with me in the various campaigns and wars that we've been involved in, that I've been involved in. So our veterans community is powerful. Our veterans community are a community of believers, because many have experienced, that sort of taste of fear. And one of the things that I need your listeners to know, and most don't, unless they have a child who's serving, or maybe they serve themselves. But when a young person signs their name on the dotted line to join our Army, Navy, Air Force, or Marine Corps, they don't necessarily totally understand it, but what they're signing that document to do, they're signing that document to potentially give their life for their country. It's not just signing up to be a mechanic or an infantryman or a pilot. It's signing up to potentially give your life for this country. And many of our military men and women have done that. And so all the veterans that survived all these wars and survived, the various conflicts that we've been involved in, I just want to say thanks to all of them. Thanks to each and every one of them that listens to this podcast. And I will tell you that in the world of voting, if I remember right, I think this particular election, I think there was 23 million that voted. I think that's the number that I was told. That could be a little bit off, but roughly 23 million. So veterans are a power block, and they just have to they have to decide, in terms of the direction of the country, which direction do you want the country to go? Do you want it to continue to be this great experiment in democracy as our founders created under this constitutional republic? Or do you want it to fall to the wayside of tyranny and socialism and Marxism and communism? Because that's the direction. Those are the two paths. Those are the two paths that are diverging. And we are at that transition point right now where our nation has to decide which path they're going to take. And I believe that, particularly in our veterans community, because they understand freedom, they understand faith, and they understand family, that path that they want to take is continuing this beautiful, wonderful experiment in democracy called the United States of America.
Golden words, General Flynn. Thank you so much. Before we go, I was thinking a lot about you over the years and before this interview. You're a very humble person. I hope I don't make you uncomfortable by saying this, but in Matthew chapter 5, verses 11 to 12, Jesus says that blessed are you when people abuse you and persecute you and speak all kinds of calumny against you falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward will be great in heaven. And that is how they persecuted the prophets before you. And I think that you're in those verses. And may God bless you, General Flynn. And it's a true honor to know you and to be your friend. I hope you can call me that as well, and to have you on the show. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jamie. That means a lot. Appreciate it.
General Flynn, right before we go, in terms of everything that you're doing, a lot of people that are watching and they want to help you or get involved and maybe would like your direction or support you. Is there somewhere they can go to support you or a good cause you would recommend?
Yes, I would. Thank you for allowing me to do that. They can go to defendingtherepublic.org, defendingtherepublic.org, and that is the place that between Sidney Powell, myself, and a couple of other patriots, created, and it exists to defend the kinds of things that we've been talking about on this show tonight. Defendingtherepublic.org, and I will tell you that the dollars that go to that will go to help the American people, we the people, fight for this country.
Defendingtherepublic.org?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. General Flynn, an honor, a privilege. We hope you will return to the Glazov Gang.
God bless you, Jamie, and thanks for having me. And to your whole audience, God bless America.
Thank you so much.
Faith.
Thank you, General Flynn. Thank you for watching this evening. Make sure you go to defendingtherepublic.org and help to make a difference. And we'll see you soon on the Glazov Gang. Good night.